Mount Sinai is not in Egypt's so-called Sinai Peninsula, and we have proof. Join Michael Rood to discover the real Mount Sinai. This awe-inspiring DVD provides undeniable proof that the real Mount Sinai is in Saudi Arabia, and that Israel has the title deed to the land, oil fields and all. The real Mount Sinai. Order now, online or by phone, exclusively from A Rood Awakening International.
Jewish tradition says the Almighty's name is too holy for common people to say. Meanwhile, Gentile Christianity replaces his name with common, empty, and even false titles, and both are taking his name in vain. Watch The Name by Michael Rood. You'll understand why it matters what we call the Almighty, and discover an authority in Messiah you never knew you had. Order your copy of The Name exclusively from A Rood Awakening International. 4,000 years ago, fire and brimstone rained down on Sodom and Gomorrah. But where are these cities today? Some believe they were swallowed into the Dead Sea. But there's new proof of what really happened. Join Michael Rood as he reveals the very walls of these cities still standing. Shocking new proof of God's wrath. Order your copy of Sodom and Gomorrah, exclusively from A Rood Awakening International. Have you been misinterpreting the Bible? Michael Rood reveals the true meaning behind the Apostle Paul's warning about false understanding disguised as religion in Let No Pagan Judge You. This easy-to-understand DVD explains the keys to properly understanding the Bible and the words of our Messiah. Let no pagan judge you. Order your copy today.
Ancient Egypt, land of power, dominance, and mystery. But there is one story that is more mysterious than all others. The parting of the Red Sea. The Bible says it happened, but do you believe it actually happened? What if there were proof that the Bible story of the Red Sea crossing is true? What if we had video evidence of Pharaoh's chariot army sitting on the sea floor? Get ready to believe.
When the woman with the issue of blood reached out for the hem of the Messiah's garment, it was more than just a hem, and her actions were more than a plea for healing. Michael Rood reveals the deeper meaning of this Bible account and how the troubled times in our world today are directly related to the hem of his garment. Order your copy of The Hem of His Garment exclusively from A Rood Awakening International.
The Bible refers to the oracles of God as the key to understanding everything in prophecy, past, present, and future. But what are these oracles, and how should we interpret them? The Road to Emmaus reveals the simple secret to the oracles of God and how to use them to interpret prophecy. Get your copy of The Road to Emmaus and pave your way to biblical understanding. Exclusively from A Rood Awakening International. Messiah was not born on December 25th, but many false gods were. Break out of spiritual blindness and show others the way with truth and tradition. In just 30 minutes, Michael Rood explains the disturbing truth about Christmas and why believers should have nothing to do with it. Watch Truth and Tradition and discover the prophecy you never knew about the Messiah's birth. Order your copy of Truth and Tradition exclusively from A Rood Awakening International.
This program is made possible through generous donations from viewers like you. To pledge your support, please visit aroodawakening.tv/give. Thank you.
Ask your Christian friends how long Jesus' or Yeshua's ministry was, and you'll get the same answer every time: 3.5 years. Does it really matter how long his ministry was? Well, actually it does. It ties into prophecy. In fact, it ties his whole ministry together. Once you understand how long his ministry really was, all of the events in the gospel start to line up. And suddenly, why Yeshua said things, seemingly out of the blue, make a lot more sense because he is fulfilling prophecy left, right, and center at the exact right time, every time. And we're going to see how it all started with something Yeshua said this week in history, when he visited his hometown. It was a Shabbat, just like today, at the end of the 6th day after the sun has set. And this is Shabbat Night Live!
Michael, it's going to be a great show tonight.
It will be.
Stand by, studio, 30 seconds.
Thank you. Michael?
Oh, thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Ellie.
Well, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. Welcome to Shabbat Night Live. A word of warning for tonight's show. We are going to kill a sacred cow. Yes, it's going to rock your world, and if you already know the truth of what we are going to share tonight, you can rock your friends' worlds. Also, tonight we begin a brand new series with the man who is continuing to take Ron Wyatt's discoveries to the ends of the earth. It's Kevin Fisher of Ark Discoveries International. But first, please welcome my co-host for this evening, the Director of Ministry Development for A Rood Awakening International, Annie Reed.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. You know, Annie, we forgot to do something last week, and I think we better get to it before anything else.
That's right.
And that is the free gift we have for our listener or our watchers right in front of you.
If this is your first time watching A Rood Awakening International, or if you've watched us for some time but have never contacted us, just call the number down below. We'd love to send you 2 free teachings, one on the Red Sea crossing and Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, Michael takes you on site to these locations, and he takes you to the actual locations of the Red Sea crossing, which is not where most scientists say that it is today, or archaeologists. And Sodom and Gomorrah, he actually takes you to the location where there's still brimstone and sulfur. So you want to have this at home. It edifies your faith. It just builds you up. If you've ever had any doubts in your faith along your walk with Jesus or Yeshua, this is going to bring you to a whole nother level. But we also include a catalog of all of our current and newest teachings, along with a lot of different materials of who we are, what we stand for, different offers that we have, and of course, coupons for you to use. So
always very helpful.
Yes.
Well, in addition to giving you free things, we also like to give out prayer, mainly because we love seeing miracles happen in people's lives, which is what we get to hear about in the resulting testimony. So let's take a look at some prayer requests that have come in this week, and you can help us pray for these folks. So first of all, I have one here about eye healing. This is from Lana. At 37 years old, I've lived with limited eyesight from birth, dominant right eye. Last year, my sister-in-law and I were called to minister to a friend. On the way there, I realized I could control my left eye all of a sudden. I was told by 2 other people that Jehovah isn't done healing me yet, and I'm asking you to bring this request to the King for me for my complete healing. Jehovah's will be done. Indeed. Amen.
Amen.
And here's one from our friend Carvel. Please pray for my sister. Her faith is being tested. She lives with her ex-husband, who is a Muslim and abusive. I really do my best to teach her. Please pray that Jehovah will empower her with the Holy Spirit. We will do that, Carvel.
I have one from Anonymous, which you can submit prayer requests anonymously. We don't mind whatsoever. It says, we've been married for 10 years now. Please pray for us to have our own child.
Okay.
That's a really good one. And then one from Michael. My grandson Oakley fell down and hit his head. He is 1.5-year-old. He was taken to the hospital and a hairline fracture was found. He stayed overnight for observation and was released. This morning he had a large lump in his head and in the same place as before. So they're just asking for continued healing over that and believing for a miracle.
Okay.
Another anonymous, Father, our nation needs your blessing upon us. Israel needs your protection. Thank you for our double portion blessings that can happen with your grace. Thank you for upcoming finalization of their adoption. So they've actually adopted siblings. So we're praying for their adoption, but we do agree that our country needs continuous prayer every single day. So we'd love to pray over these. We'd love to pray with you. We actually have people that stand by the phones waiting to pray for our partners. And I'm a testimony of prayer that came over the television screen myself when I was 17 years old. So it can happen, miracles and healings can happen when you least expect them. And we pray that, during this segment, during this time, that we're able to pray into your needs and into your life, no matter what it may be.
All right, well, let's take these requests to prayer. So, Father, we want to bring all these requests to you today. We have requests for healing for children. We have folks that want to have kids. We have people who are struggling in their marriage because of abusive situations. And we have prayers for more healing of an eye, for example. So, Father, we bring all of these before you, and we know that you are our great healer. You know all things, and we know that you have the power to complete all of these healings and to complete all of these requests before we even ask them. So we stand on that belief, and we want to thank you in advance for the completion of all of these people's needs. And we ask this in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
And if you have a prayer request, you can just go to the website at the bottom of the screen and submit your prayer request. And the best part is other people can pray with you there. And once they do, you'll get a notification by email that someone has prayed for you. That's a wonderful feature that we have on our website. We also have some testimonies here today. Andy, I believe you have a couple of those there.
I do. So we actually grabbed testimonies that flooded our emails about the Jerry Bowen series that we had on Noah's Ark.
Oh, yes, Anchored.
That's right.
Okay.
And so we want to share this with you because we want you to know that we do listen to your suggestions, your opinions. We want to hear what you like, what you don't like, what we can do for you to serve you better. But Dennis says, Shabbat Shalom, brothers. I really enjoyed Jerry Bowen on SNL the last couple of weeks, and in response to Michael's request, I would absolutely be interested in seeing more.
Okay, there you go. That's all you need to do. We'll listen to such things. You want Jerry back? Just say so.
Well, and we also have a few more. Jerry Bowen's presentation was excellent. Thank you. And then they referenced Jeremiah 10:13, where he utters his voice and multitude of waters in the heaven, and he would cause the vapors to ascend unto the ends of the earth. So he actually references this because it's a testimony for his faith. When he read that scripture, it was so confusing. So anyways, he said, I love the Anchored series, and I definitely want to hear more from Jerry Bowen on SNL. I would also love to hear anything about pre-flood Giza. So, and the reason that we're reading these testimonies to you right now is because we have a very special series that is starring with Kevin Fisher from
archaeological.com.
And it's going to be all about discoveries like the Red Sea crossing.
From Ron Wyatt.
That's right, from Ron Wyatt. He actually is continuing Ron Wyatt's work and traveling to these locations and bringing testing and videos and a whole bunch of documentation that just confirm Ron Wyatt's discoveries.
It does, yeah. It's good to hear from another person's mouth, not just from Ron Wyatt. Some people hear that and they think it's all just myth, but when you have someone going back to the site and saying, yes, you know, he was right. In fact, we're going to have a whole DVD series on this. Not only a DVD series of this whole 4-part miniseries that we're going to have on Shabbat Night Live. That's contained here. But we also have Kevin Fisher's DVD that we're going to bundle with it. And from now on, whenever we have a guest on the show who has materials of their own, we're going to bundle it with whatever you see on Shabbat Night Live, so you can get the full picture of what that guest's ministry is all about.
And I love this one in particular with Kevin Fisher. He's gonna actually, in his series, take you back to Sodom and Gomorrah, Noah's Ark, the Red Sea crossing, Mount Sinai, Ark of the Covenant, which I think is the best one yet.
It is,
because they actually did some testing, DNA testing on the blood. But I don't want to spoil it for you. I know that you and Kevin go into detail about that,
Yes.
and then this goes into detail as well. But it also has bonus material of Ron Wyatt's presentations.
Yeah, it's the gold mine, that DVD right there.
That's right, and we're giving both of these to you at a discount.
Right, and you can find it you can get it as of tonight, roodawakening.tv/AD. Now, getting back to our testimonies and such, if you would like to share in the testimonies or submit a prayer request or just want to know more about what is going on here at Rood Awakening, we have a free newsletter we'd like to send to you as well. And Annie, I think you have one in front of you.
Yes, so this one's our June newsletter. It's beautiful, isn't it?
It is. The 10 Commandments on the front.
Yes, Jonathan actually does our newsletter, and he's very talented. He does great work. It always features a letter from Michael, and it's very timing for whatever season's approaching. So this one in particular was about Shavuot. And then, actually, that was kind of the theme for the entire newsletter. So we have letters. This one is about weeks in the wilderness, which we've always been, we've all have been there, especially it seems like during these feast times. There's a lot more. And then whatever is new and upcoming. So like, for instance, what's new and upcoming this month is you can now text to give. So all you have to do is text truth to the number 50155, and it's just a more convenient way for you to be able to continue to sow into a ministry that is praying over people, that is sharing testimonies, that is providing free information to the entire world. We'd love to have you in your support. But then on this one, it also features all of our new products, including Torah Wars, Passover, and all month long in our bookstore, there'll be 20% off.
Anything. 20% off anything.
That's right. So, and the best part, the most fun part, is we have activities for your children on the back. So this one is making the 10 Commandment tablets.
Or for the child in you. You know, if you have any kids.
Yes, which I've referenced that earlier prior to the show.
Well, wonderful. You can get the newsletter very easily. Just go on our front page of our website, or you can call the number at the bottom of your screen, and you can get our newsletter free of charge.
Absolutely.
Now, you can sign up for that newsletter, like I said, any day of the week. And speaking of days, let's take a look at where we are on the astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar. We are actually on the second Shabbat of the month of Sivan. Now, this calendar correlates events in Yeshua's life as found in the chronological Gospels Bible. There's my Bible right there. But this week, there is nothing marked on the calendar itself about what is going on in the Bible. However, this is a significant week. It was during this week that Yeshua was visiting his hometown of Nazareth and went into the synagogue and said something more profound than most people realize, and actually proves that Yeshua's ministry was roughly 1 year.
Ooh, I want to hear this,
yes,
please.
Or 70 weeks. There we go. Not 3.5 years as commonly assumed. It is event number 52 in the chronological Gospels. That's how we divide the chronological Gospels, are divided into events in Yeshua's life. This is event number 52. It's on page 91 of the printed version, or you can look in your regular Bible. It's Luke 4, 16 to 30 in your regular Bible. Now, here's the crux of the matter. In verse 19, it says that this is the acceptable year of Yehovah. The acceptable year of Yehovah. Now, nobody really takes that literally, but it's not just some spiritualized phrase. It is literal, a year. But you can only realize that if you understand when this event happened. This is a prime example of why I say that the notes in the Chronological Gospels Bible are the most important part of it. The notes that Michael Rood has put together are the best part because they explain why chronology makes sense. So let me read an example for you here on the note on page 91. It says, this event occurred in the first Sabbath after Shavuot. 1 year later, the feast of Shavuot, the Messiah will mikvah, or baptize, his followers with the Holy Spirit. This pronouncement of the acceptable year of Yehovah, or acceptable year of the Lord, and the Passover lamb, being a year old male, are the two most ignored prophetic statements in the history of Christendom because of the inherited heresy of a man named Eusebius, who fictionalized the 3.5-year ministry. There you go. And if you go down to the bottom of that note, it says, Yeshua accurately proclaimed the final 1-year countdown in which the spring feasts of Yehovah would be fulfilled. That's the whole reason he did it at this time. Now, once you read that, it all comes together. It also demonstrates that timing matters in the Bible and that Yeshua says things on certain days for very specific reasons. And that's why I think this is a perfect way to introduce Christian friends to the Hebraic roots. It's an easy example of reading Scripture in a different light, and that starts the process of understanding the gospel properly. So if you'd like to share this information with your friends, get them a copy of the Chronological Gospels. I mean, I've had folks who have given this for Christmas, just to have a point. I mean, we don't celebrate Christmas once you realize your Hebraic roots, because Jesus never celebrated Christmas. He never celebrated Easter, that kind of thing. But it's a good way to say, take another look at the Bible. The words are not any different, but the context in which you read the words is different.
It's different once it's put into order as it's happening, and the notes are just, there's nothing like it.
Right.
And we've received a lot of Bibles being here at the ministry. There is nothing on the market like this. The notes that Michael goes into, and completely understanding the culture and the time, the rules and regulations of the Pharisees during this time period that Yeshua would have to follow is just makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and it's not just like you've seen some other chronological Bibles. We've all seen those. This is something different. This really shows you, it's almost like we're watching a screenplay of the Bible.
That's exactly how it reads, like a screenplay.
Yeah, and so all the notes at the bottom are almost like the background of what is going on the screen.
That's right, the setting. And so this month only, it's 20% off the Chronological Gospels. It's a great time to buy one if you've never had one or owned one, and to give one to friends as well. We'd love for you to be able to share it with others. We promise that this is going to take your relationship with Yehovah to a whole nother level simply because you'll understand him like never before.
Indeed. Now, so you need to make up an excuse to get them one. That's what we need to do. Or you could dive right in and take them into this month's Love Gift, which is all about another event that happened this month called Shavuot. And here's the gift right here for a gift of $50 to the ministry. We'll give you this brand new teaching by Michael called Shavuot, the Promise Received. It is only for those who want to see this ministry continue. So that's what this is all about. So that's why we give it with a donation of $50. If you want to give so go ahead.
I was going to say, and Michael too, he was very forthcoming when sharing with us Shavuot and the future Love Gift teachings. It's on his heart. This is what's leading up to prophecy. This is what's leading up to Revelation. We're going into the fall feast now. Shavuot's done, the spring feasts are done, but this time period is so significant to him. He pulled us into his office and he said these last 3 teachings of this series are the most important out of all of them. So if you haven't read, or if you haven't seen any of the previous ones, this is your opportunity to see them.
That's right.
These are the ones that are most near and dear to his heart.
Now, there are 3 levels to this love gift. We don't have time to go into it right now, but you can go to our website at roodawakening.tv/lovegift, and you can see them all there. Now, coming up, the first episode in a new 4-part mini-series here on Shabbat Night Live, AD. Archaeology Discovered, AD, with Kevin Fisher. This is the man who is taking Ron Wyatt's discoveries around the world, including the truth about Sodom and Gomorrah, the Red Sea crossing, the Ark of the Covenant, and Noah's Ark. So text your friends and family right now, get them to watch the show, or they can always watch the replay at ShabbatNightLive.com. And remember, your donations make this program possible. If you can give, please do, and we thank you in advance. In fact, if you want to get them something in return, you can get them that love gift we just talked about. Watch the commercial coming up right now, and you can find out how to do that.
After the Messiah's ascension, his followers were told to wait for the Comforter, who would empower them with his Spirit, on the very anniversary date that the Almighty delivered his commandments on Mount Sinai. Michael Rood explains the amazing correlations between the giving of the Torah and Pentecost in this month's exclusive teaching, Shavuot, the Promise Received.
And this pillar of fire was that awesome pillar of fire that we followed out of Egypt, that led us by night and the cloud by day.
Get this amazing teaching now for a love gift donation of just $50. Or with a donation of $100 or more, we'll send you the teaching plus a beautiful set of coasters with scenes of Jerusalem. And we're continuing our special offer on this special leather-bound Book of Psalms of King David. Get the Book of Psalms plus the teaching and the coasters as our thank you when you donate $250 or more in June. Call now or visit us online to pledge your support and receive these wonderful gifts right now.
We've all seen it in movies with Charlton Heston, and many movies have been made about it since. The Red Sea crossing is possibly one of the most fascinating miracles that God ever performed in the Bible, and people are still talking about it, still trying to figure it out, but many people are figuring it out incorrectly. Where did the actual Red Sea crossing take place, and what kind of evidence do we have for it? Well, we have a very fascinating guest today who's going to tell us more about that. It's Kevin Fisher. Kevin is the president of Ark Discoveries International. Welcome, Kevin.
Nice to be with you, Scott.
So the Red Sea crossing, where do people typically say it is, and why is that?
They usually say it's up at the Bitter Lakes, north of the Suez Canal area, but that's a relatively, and it really is, a rather shallow area for hundreds of thousands of soldiers to all drown, and there, there's no evidence found there. You don't find, chariots there. You don't find other artifacts, but the area that the late Ron Wyatt found is across the Sinai. If you cross the Sinai to the east, you find another body of water. That's the Gulf of Aqaba. And what Mr. Wyatt did, he suspected that could be the crossing area. And he rented a plane up at Eilat, Israel, the southern tip of Israel, the north end of the Gulf of Aqaba. And he asked his pilot, named Moses,
how fitting.
He said, Moses, do you know of an area through the mountains down here where the children of Israel could have come through and hit the beach? And Moses said, yes. And Moses flew him down to the Nuweiba beach area that has a wadi emptying out at that spot.
Now, wadi is
it's like a canyon. It snakes its way through the mountains. We've driven down, it's like 30 miles approximately. You have these large mountains extending up from the roadbed through there.
And it's very narrow, is it not?
It gets narrow in places, yeah. It gets really narrow in some places, approximately 50 yards across maybe, but other areas it's wider. But Mr. Wyatt, so when Mr. Wyatt saw that, they then went down there on foot, and he went to the south end of the beach there. The beach is 5 miles long, 3 miles deep. The depth of it. So 15 square miles approximately of land area there for 3 million people. That's enough land area. So he went to the south end of the beach and he saw this column lying in the water that had been knocked down. And that same year, the Israeli army was occupying the Sinai Peninsula in 1978, and he showed it to them. They brought it back from the water, set it up in concrete, and it's a Phoenician-style column, approximately 16 feet tall, marking the site of the Red Sea crossing. Pretty incredible. And when Mr. Wyatt made it over into Saudi Arabia in 1984, he saw a matching column on the other side. And on that column in Hebrew, it said Solomon, Yahweh, water, death, Mizraim, which means Egypt, Moses, Pharaoh. And so he knew this was a marker telling about the Red Sea crossing site that had been erected by Solomon. Solomon's seaport was just to the north up at Eilat, Israel. So Solomon knew full well, 400 years after the event, that this was the location for the crossing site. And so the marker had these inscriptions on it. And when he showed it to the Saudi authorities, they got excited, but then later they came out and cut it down and hauled it away.
Of course they did.
On the Saudi side. Yeah, they don't want that Hebrew writing in their country. And so, but the column over on the Egyptian side, the inscriptions on it are eroded away. The backside of the column is eroded away because it was down in the water. But you can stand there by the column today and see this beautiful red granite pillar marking the spot where the pillar of fire and pillar of cloud also stood at one point. So after finding that column, Mr. Wyatt got his diving certificate and wanted to check the water out there. And through a series of dives, I think it was the first dive they actually went out, they found a coral-covered chariot wheel. Pretty incredible. And so subsequent to that, they found other chariot wheels. They even found a gold-plated wheel. We're told in Exodus that 600 choice chariots and all the chariots of Israel were used. So the choice chariots would be those that were gold-plated. So there should be 1,200 gold-plated chariot wheels out there. They were able to locate a couple of the golden chariot wheels. No coral grows on gold, so it's better preserved. Now the other ones, the coral did grow on them, but the coral helps to preserve the shape. You know, if you may have a bronze or a wooden wheel, the coral grows on it and it retains the shape, so we can see it today. So by finding the chariot wheels, and then later he found a horse's hoof, a horse's remains, and then finding the remains of people, finding human femur bones that were coral covered. And so you have chariot parts, horse parts, people parts, all in the same spot. And so later Viveka Pontin, she went scuba diving over on the Saudi Arabian side. And she found a chariot wheel over there on the Saudi Arabian side. So you have matching chariot parts on opposite sides of the Red Sea crossing. So the parts continue to the other side.
Now this crossing site, this is on a, correct me if I'm wrong, it is almost like a land bridge situation where it looks like the silt from the Wadi Watir would have spilled into there many, many years over, and it's sand, and coral doesn't normally grow on sand.
It is rather smooth there. It is shallower there as compared to areas to the north or to the south. Now it is still deep. Now we're told in several places in the Bible that it was the great deep or the depths of the Red Sea. So it cannot be some places 50 feet deep or places 100. It's got to be really deep. And the site there, it is deep, it's 2,800 feet deep. But it's a 13-mile path across. And so when you calculate it, the grade was about a 4% grade that they had to go down and come back up, which is very manageable. And so yeah, there is a path through the water for them to go over to the other side. God provided a way for them.
That is very interesting. So now the chariot parts, I know that these have been filmed since that time with Leonard Mahler and others.
Yes.
They went down and took a robotic camera and took it down there and filmed all these things. So what we see on that film, that is different than what this other individual saw on the Saudi side then.
That's true. Yeah, multiple parties have found chariot wheels there, not just Mr. Wyatt. Bill Fry found chariot parts, Aaron Sin, Ross Patterson, Viveka Pontin, Linder Moeller, part of the Tim Mahoney team, and patternsofevidence.com. They're creating a film. Their second film is going to be on this Red Sea crossing site, which leads over to a new location for Mount Sinai, which is Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia, which is a totally new thought to most people. But that has to be over there in Saudi Arabia, because that's where Midian is. Midian is a location for Saudi Arabia. The real Midian's location for Mount Sinai there in Saudi Arabia, compared to the Sinai Peninsula where the traditional Mount Sinai is located. So the Mount Sinai has to be over in Saudi Arabia, and this Red Sea crossing brings the children of Israel directly over to Saudi Arabia, the correct spot, and so it all adds up.
And so this has been found by many, many people. It's not just Ron Wyatt, because I know a lot of people question his credibility just because they like to do so. But it's been proven by many, many other people.
Yes.
So this has got to be it.
Yes, it really is. And more people are figuring this out. The editor of the Biblical Archaeology Review, Herschel Shanks, he stated in Newsweek magazine that Jebel el-Lawz in Saudi Arabia is the real site for Mount Sinai. So again, more credibility for the Mount Sinai, more credibility for this Red Sea crossing. We think this is the correct location.
All right, well, we'll save the Jebel el-Lawz for another time. We want to get into that next. Okay, so Ken Fisher, thank you for joining us today, and if we want more information from your group, it is arcdiscovery.com, correct?
Thank you, yes.
All right, arcdiscovery.com, check it out, and you'll find out all about these interesting discoveries from the Bible and get the true story. Michael Rood's Message of Truth is broadcast all over the world, but none of it happens without the monthly financial support of our Ambassador Club members. And right now, membership has more benefits than ever.
I'm giving into a ministry that is helping to feed other people that have this same hunger that I do.
Join now, and Michael Rood will send you the Ambassador Club Welcome Kit, an exclusive messenger bag stocked with teaching DVDs, Red Sea crossing cards, and more. You'll also receive ambassador-only bonus gifts whenever you make a separate donation to receive the monthly love gift. Best of all, you'll get ambassador-only sale prices in our online bookstore several times throughout the year. Plus, exclusive invitations to Ambassador Club functions at a Rood Awakening events. All it takes is a modest commitment of $100 per month or an annual gift of $1,200. Call now or visit the Rood Awakening website to join the Ambassador Club.
The last night that Yeshua was with his disciples, the Last Supper before the Passover was sacrificed, he took bread and he took wine. He said before that Abraham saw his day and rejoiced. But what does that mean? He saw his day and rejoiced. Well, it was the Melchizedek, the king of righteousness, that brought forth bread and wine to Abraham. He blessed the Most High with the blessing that Abraham taught Yitzhak, Yitzhak taught Yaakov, and is still spoken today. Whenever bread and wine is served at a Jewish table, whenever it is Sabbath, especially around the world, the bread and the wine are brought forth with this blessing. Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hagafen. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, the creator of the fruit of the vine. And Yeshua then said, Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. He said, this represents my body, which will be broken for you. This represents my shed blood that pays the sin penalty because of the broken covenant. As often as we do this, we do this in remembrance of him. So break the bread, share the wine, and we do this in remembrance of him until he comes.
Well, Shalom Torah fans, Michael is on assignment, but he wanted to give the stage to our guest today anyway. So you have very good timing being here today. If you love Sodom and Gomorrah, the Ark of the Covenant, the Red Sea crossing, all of these classic teachings Michael does, Michael has something very familiar with our guest today. They both ran into a man named Ron Wyatt many years ago, and today's guest is the president of Ark Discoveries International. Please welcome Kevin Fisher. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Nice to be with you, Scott.
Welcome to Shabbat Night Live. So, this is something that I know was very close to Michael's heart, and he wishes he could be here, so he sends his regards, and he wanted to just tell everyone watching Shabbat Night Live that he wanted to be here and ask you these questions, but I get the privilege of doing so.
Fantastic.
So,
yeah.
So Ron Wyatt, way back in, gosh, the 70s, Ron was looking into the mysteries of the Bible as we now find commonplace on places like the History Channel and Discovery.
Sure.
And he was really the pioneer in all of these things. How did it start for him?
Okay. Well, he had seen a 1960 Life magazine article about this boat-shaped formation in the mountains of Ararat, there in eastern Turkey. It was spotted by a Turkish army captain, Mr. Durpınar.
Okay.
And in 1959. And so this group, mainly from the USA, went out there to explore the site. And Life magazine reported on their time out there. They saw the boat-shaped formation. Half of them thought it was a natural formation. The other half thought, hey, this has got potential. But it sat there, for 17 years without anyone else going out there. And so Ron Wyatt started thinking about going out there and investigating the site. But before he went anywhere or did anything, he had a burden for souls. And he prayed to the Lord, Lord, help me find something that will help someone get to heaven. This wasn't about, Lord, help me find something so I can get rich. It was about doing the Lord's work and helping someone get to heaven.
And that's the way everyone describes Ron Wyatt.
That's right.
Now, Ron Wyatt, if for those of our audience who don't know, he was an amateur archaeologist. He was not a professional archaeologist who worked for some big organization or anything like that.
That's right. And the disciples were not professional theologians
Good
either.
point. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so God will use the humble to confuse the wise. And so God chose him. Ron went out there in 77. And he didn't know exactly where to look for this boat-shaped formation. He had 3 days in the area, because it's a 5.5-day trip out there, and then 5.5 days back, using his 2-week vacation from work. So, like most of us understand. And so he and his sons knelt down and prayed, Lord, help us find this. They had rented a taxi to drive them around.
Now, this was in 77.
77.
So no one else from the Western world had been out to this area. This is, first of all, where are we talking about here?
This is in eastern Turkey next to the border with Iran.
Okay, so I'm assuming that that the folks in that area, that it's a local legend, if nothing else. They knew about this thing.
The villagers there's a village right near the site. They believed that was Noah's Ark, but of course the word hasn't gotten out, properly, or people don't believe. So they prayed that God would stall their taxi where they needed to look.
They actually prayed
They prayed for, divine intervention.
Okay.
And so the taxi starts driving around, and all of a sudden, the taxi stopped, quit running. The driver's confused, but Ron and his sons are excited.
Huh.
And they jump out and put a pile of stones there.
Okay.
And they get back in, the car starts up, and they start driving again. So this happened 2 more times that day.
So this thing, now, did they pray for, maybe you don't even know this end of it, did they pray for that the taxi would stall, something specific, or something would happen?
Well, they were in the taxi, and they prayed that God would intervene and help them find it.
Okay.
Okay, so anyway, the taxi stalled 3 times, and so the next day they went back to these piles of stones, and they walked directly out from them. And there is Noah's Ark. There are these sea anchors that hung from the ark to help keep the front pointed into the waves. And then the remains of what appears to be Noah's house or some building associated with Noah. So God directed them to these sites. And these are things that Ron later investigated. And of course the Noah's Ark site was deemed Noah's Ark National Park with a visitor center. And
Well, we'll get into that. We want to save some of these details. We want to give away all the...
So God was using him.
Yeah.
Okay, and God could tell, Ron could tell God was using him, and the next year, then, he decides to start looking for the Red Sea crossing site.
Now, what possessed him to do this type of thing? Is it just a divine...
I think God puts ideas in people's minds.
Absolutely,
If you're in connection with God, he puts thoughts in your mind. So he got the idea the next year, to look for the Red Sea crossing site. And so he went to the Gulf of Aqaba, to the northern end of Gulf of Aqaba is Eilat, and they rented an airplane to look along the eastern edge of the Sinai Peninsula for an opening through the mountains.
So now this is, nowadays we have movies like Patterns of Evidence, a modern documentary that was just done, and all these other, like we said, the History Channel, Discovery Channel, but this is in what, 1980?
Well, 78, yes.
78, so this is before any Westerner had dared stick their neck out and look for these things.
Yeah, this is a totally new area. No one had looked over the Gulf of Aqaba for the Red Sea crossing, for instance. So he hired an airplane and asked the pilot, Moses. Yes, Moses. Now,
I love it.
He said, Moses, is there a way for the children of Israel to go to these mountains here along the eastern edge of the Sinai Peninsula? And Moses said, yes, I know the spot.
I'll bet Moses knows the spot.
Yeah, he sure does. And so they went down to the beach at Nuweiba, a large, 5-mile long beach that juts out 3 miles into the Gulf. And he said, there's Wadi Watur that goes through the mountains and empties onto this beach. It's about a 30-mile drive through the mountains. We've been through there.
Now the Wadi Watur, a wadi essentially is a dry, deep cavern.
Like a canyon, and they snake their way there to the Red Sea crossing site. So, and while he was there, he found this column marking the spot.
A column? Like what kind of column?
It was a pillar erected by Solomon, he found out later.
Okay.
Okay, and then the next time they went there, they found chariot wheels in the water. So on that second trip they made there, with the first dive, they found the chariot wheels. He had to leave. He was going back to Jerusalem to fly out. And it's at that point then that God performed a miracle. He raised Ron's arm in the Garden Tomb grounds, and Ron said, there's Jeremiah's grotto, and the Ark of the Covenant is in there.
So wait a second.
Yeah,
he's being led from one adventure to another. This is like real-life Indiana Jones here.
Right. And so he conducted the dig later and did find the Ark of the Covenant. But let's take a look at this. From 77 to 78, he found out the location of Noah's Ark. He found the Red Sea crossing spot. That then told him for sure Mount Sinai is over in Saudi Arabia, and God raised his arm and put the words out of his mouth. There's Jeremiah's grotto, and the Ark of the Covenant is in there. He said that in 78. Within 1 year, he had found, through the Lord's leading, these 4 incredible discoveries. God was truly using him.
That is unreal. So obviously now, because people have been searching for these things from, for centuries, for thousands of years. There's always the legend of the chalice that Christ used at the Last Supper. All of these type of things. Where's a piece of the cross? Everybody's always looking for relics. But Ron was not looking for relics' sake, was he?
No, he was wanting to do the Lord's work, and the Lord had a plan for these things to come out. These discoveries, they all deal with judgment in the past. Okay, at the flood, God judged man, had to destroy the wicked, but he saved his faithful. Sodom and Gomorrah, he judged the wicked, destroyed them. He saved his people. The Red Sea crossing, he saved his people, destroyed the wicked. Mount Sinai, he handed down the law, spoke it, and wrote it. And then, of course, the Ark of the Covenant contains that same law that we'll be judged by. So these are signs of past judgments. Why does he want them to come out? It's because the judgment of the living is coming soon, where we'll receive either the seal of God or the mark of the beast. So God has a plan. These are all going to be shown to mankind before God judges everyone.
And on the opposite side of that judgment is obviously deliverance, which also happened in each one of those Bible stories.
He saved his people through these judgments.
It's no wonder that people look at Ron Wyatt's discoveries and say, well, how could one man find all of these in a span of a year or so?
Right, and it's sad to even hear Christians saying that. You know, there's a lot of people out there that think God is no longer involved in miracles. That's a thing of the past. He's not doing major miracles anymore. But in this case, you see miracle after miracle where God used Ron and assisted him. And so it's very exciting.
So now you had run into Ron. Now Ron did this in 1978, 79, and he also ventured into Arabia and was arrested. We'll get into all that later. Yeah. But you ran into him in about, what was it, 1984?
1984.
Okay.
He had been released from the Saudi Arabian prison where he and his sons had crossed over by foot to go to Mount Sinai.
Right. Now they were looking for Mount Sinai in Arabia and basically got caught. What are you doing here? Mm-hmm. And they accused him of espionage,
being
right?
an Israeli spy,
yeah.
Which is totally false, you know. But so he had been released from prison. He's been in prison 76 days. And of course, he made the national news. And he had a presentation at a church in Nashville, Tennessee. And that's where I met him. I really felt impressed. These things were real. And so I started following his work for years. Reading his newsletters, going to presentations, calling him on the phone. But sadly in '99 he passed away. But the discoveries, since they're real, they continue on. And people are learning more and more that they really are authentic.
So when you first met him in '84, did you have a chance to talk to him? Did you have any idea that you wanted to promote his work at that point? Or were you just sort of a curious onlooker and just a participant in his talks?
Well, that was my first taste of it, but I really felt impressed that they were real. And I did talk to him a little bit, but just kept following it, kept going to presentations. And the more I got into it, the more I saw that this is real. You know, this isn't something made up. And when something's as exciting, as big as this, you know God is involved. And that's been the case.
Indeed. So when you met him, in '84, and then did you work? You worked, or you got his newsletter and everything until he died. Did you ever work with him before he passed away?
No, not directly. No, but I did. You know, I did, like I say, call him on the phone, ask him questions, talk to other direct supporters, you know, see what was going on and so forth. But after he died in 2000, I started my website, arcdiscovery.com. And so I started promoting the discoveries and then going over to the sites. And one thing after another, it was just as he said. You know, I found man-made metal on Noah's Ark, finding the brimstone in Sodom and Gomorrah, and cremated bone. So, you know, these things are real.
Now you had, in '84, you went to see him, and as you mentioned now, it's led to a lifelong passion, and it has led to some, well, you said you're retired now, and you do arcdiscovery.com as a, more than you don't want to call it a hobby, it's a part-time job.
It's a passion, yes.
It's a passion, yeah, that's even better.
Yeah.
And you got, just like any of us, you've got 2 grown kids.
Yes.
Wife. So, and you're doing all these travelings. So let's go back to way back when this all started. What even possessed you to go see Ron Wyatt in 1984? What was the fascination?
Well, you know, I heard about the presentation taking place, and, you know, Noah's Ark, what, you know. And,
had you been an archaeology buff as a kid?
No, it just, you know, got my interest.
Okay.
And, you know, these are major things. This isn't a little piece of pottery found in some, you know, normal dig someplace. These are huge discoveries that threaten the forces of darkness. And we've seen over the years how Satan has tried to discredit Ron, tried to discredit the discoveries. But when you're working with God's things, you have to expect these false accusations to come up.
So you go to this presentation in '84. How old are you then?
I was 24.
24 years old. So you're just a young guy,
those
straight
are the
out of
days.
college.
Yeah.
Okay, starting a career, and you hear of this thing. So along the years, did it ever occur to you, well, gosh, maybe I should be helping Ron? Did you want to help him before he passed away?
Well, it took time and money, and I didn't have either. So time ran out, you know, when Ron passed away. It was sad. But then I started going to the sites. A tour group opened up in 2000, first time going to Noah's Ark in like 8 or 10 years. And so I've been back there several times since. But It's all incredible, and it's all real, Scott.
Wow, that is just unreal. And so now, he's doing all these discoveries, but that's not his full-time job. As we mentioned earlier, Ron is not an archaeologist.
That's right. He was a nurse anesthetist. But so he would work a month or two in Nashville, take most of that money and head overseas to work on these discoveries, back and forth for 22 years doing this.
Wow.
And he spent approximately $1 million working on the discoveries, and 120 to 130 trips overseas. If you can imagine going overseas 120, 130 times, that right there wears you out.
That is a worn-out passport, if nothing else.
Yeah, living out of a suitcase, you know, for half of your life, half of the...
Goodness, what did his wife think of all this? Did you ever talk about that?
Well, she's been a big supporter and a big help to him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is she still with us?
She is, yes. Mary Nell Wyatt Lee.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but Ron totally devoted to this, you know, putting his time in it, putting his money in it. And you know when someone is doing that much and everything he's saying, one thing after another is found to be true. The man's humble, authentic, very genuine Christian. A lot of people can see that when he's doing a presentation, speaking at a church. They can see that, you know, he's a genuine, humble Christian man.
So he's going now. He's a nurse anesthetist. So he's you know, he's not living below the poverty line. He has some money to spend, and obviously he did that with his trips. I understand by looking at your website, arcdiscovery.com, that when Ron was with us, I mean, his home looked very humble. He lived in he showed us to live in a duplex.
That's true. I mean, he lived in a duplex, if you can imagine, a humble little duplex with large bookcases with all these archaeology books, you know, historical books where he would do research and so forth. So he was putting his money where his mouth was and putting it into the work, devoting, you know, his life to this. So you knew that this man was, you know, telling the truth. You can see the four major discoveries: the Noah's Ark, Red Sea crossing, Mount Sinai, Sodom and Gomorrah. Those are visible things that you can see are real. Now, the Ark of the Covenant, some people have had a lot of doubt, but his credibility was established. God showed that he was working with Ron, and when Ron comes out with a report from the Ark of the Covenant cave, we need to respect that. On the Day of Atonement, when a priest went into the most holy place, he didn't take a committee in there with him to anoint the most holy. He went in by himself to do the Lord's work and came out with a report. Ron did the same thing. He went into the most holy place, got to see the Ark of the Covenant, and he came out with a report. And so we should respect that.
I have respect just for the fact of seeing some of these photos of, I mean, this guy had some guts. When you look at the first photo, I think it was from the photo said around 1981, the first time he went down into the cave where the Ark of the Covenant is, where he found it. That is a small opening. This was not some giant cave. This is scary.
A 100-foot tunnel leading down to the Ark of the Covenant cave, and you're going down a chimney, up a chimney, squeezing through tight places, as you say, sliding across a board with a 40-foot drop. Very precarious, very hard work. He worked from 79 to 82 on this first tunnel that he dug.
So he dug this tunnel?
Well, he and his associates. There's a lot of people that helped him. Yeah. Some of it were natural cavities. You would hit a natural cavity that would let you go a little further. And you may, of course, this is solid rock we're talking about. We're not talking about just loose sand or soil.
Right.
This is hard work. So he progressed, you know, the 100 feet to get to the spot. But he said this is too difficult a route to get to the Ark of the Covenant cave. And so he spent another 7 or 8 years building a second tunnel to the Ark of the Covenant cave. And we're talking a lot of money spent on the second tunnel because he thought some of the temple furnishings needed to come out. So again, building a second tunnel. A friend of mine was on the dig with Ron for about 3 weeks. He said Ron paid all his expenses. He said Ron probably paid out $7,000 in that short amount of time, and they only made 6 feet of progress. So He was in it 100%. The digging a second tunnel is another sign that he was telling the truth. He spent a lot of money for the second tunnel that was more direct. If you're a fraud, all you need is one tunnel. Okay?
One tunnel and a good story.
Yeah, and then you could say, hey, you know, if I'm the real fraud, come on down through this tunnel. I'll let you look in this cave, and you can see my Ark of the Covenant that I made. And you just pay me $5,000 and you can do that. But no, Ron wouldn't let people look into the cave. You know, did the high priest let people look into the most holy place? No.
No, and in fact, what would happen if they did?
They would die.
Now, tell us a little bit about how that correlation, we don't want to get into too much detail, but I want to share that because we're at this point and we want to talk about this. So, it's interesting that you mentioned that Ron was like a type of high priest that went into the holy place because others tried to go in there. What happened?
Yes. Around 1995, there is a tunnel leading from Zedekiah's cave up to where the cave is north of the city wall, and they made it approximately 75 feet up this tunnel. It was 6 men, 6 Kohathites, dressed in Levitical garb.
They were serious. They must have believed
They were going after the Ark, yes.
Okay.
Yes. They made it 75 feet up this tunnel, and God struck them all dead.
Wow.
And Ron was in town at the time, and they contacted Ron in Jerusalem, will you come down here to Zedekiah's cave? And so he went down there, and they said 6 men went up this tunnel, and we can't hear from them now. And so he went up the tunnel with a rescue basket and rolled the men into the basket, and they were pulled out one by one. So the Israeli authorities know this is real, but they don't know what to do. You know, at this point, it's a waiting game for them, and it is for us too. It's not for us. God has a timing for this, and it's not for us to force the issue, you know, to try to bring it out. So the Israeli authority, they know it's there.
I find that very interesting because, you know, Ron's first trip down there to find the Ark of the Covenant and to do all of these discoveries, this was before the Indiana Jones movies came out.
Yes.
It's almost as if he was the inspiration for the movies.
I think, you know, in 78, Ron made this statement, and Satan heard it too. And Satan said to Steve Spielberg, let's make a movie about the Ark of the Covenant. That's what I think. Okay, so the bogus story comes out when the real story is coming out. But Ron was a totally genuine man. I had an email from someone there in Middle Tennessee. She said Ron was her anesthetist when she was giving birth, and that Ron had prayed with her beforehand, and when her baby was born, it was stillborn.
I've read the story. It's on your website.
Yes. And she started screaming. She was so distraught. And then she looked for Ron in the room, and over in the corner was Ron kneeling down, praying for that baby. And then a light appeared in the center of the room.
Now, by the account that's on the website, it sounds like the other doctors didn't see that light, but they knew something was strange.
The doctor did tell her later. The doctor did tell her later that they understood God was in the room.
Huh.
And that baby started crying. That light came on to say, this is not an accident. God is here, and I'm about to do something. And so God listened to Ron. There's not many people that can pray and someone comes back to life. Ron had a genuine connection with God, and he gave God all the credit, though, of course. This is something I found out through someone contacting me. It's nothing he ever told anybody.
Really? So he didn't relay this, so he didn't say anything?
Right, not that I know of. This is something totally new. So the man was genuine. He had an incredible connection with God, and I view him as the most important person I've ever met in my life, that's ever lived during my lifetime, is Ron Wyatt.
So now we're going to get into a little bit later in the second half of the program tonight, Michael's encounter with Ron, and just how he found the discoveries and what got him interested as well.
Sure.
But yeah, I just find that this everywhere you turn about Ron Wyatt, other than what is seen in the media, and the media, strangely enough, has just sort of written him off and they don't talk about him. They scoff.
Yeah.
But he's a genuine guy.
Right. You know, Satan controls the media. You can't expect the evening news to announce Ron Wyatt has found all these wonderful things. Isn't this exciting? They're never going to say that.
No, there's two obscure stories from CNN and CBS Morning News or something like that from back in the 80s and early 90s, and I can just imagine the guests on the show smirking as they're listening to this going, yeah, okay, well, coming up next, you know.
Yeah, and even the majority of archaeologists, you know, a majority of them don't even believe the Exodus from Egypt ever happened, and yet we're to look to them as being the authority on whether these things are real or not.
Thankfully, you know, the new documentary that has come out, the Patterns of Evidence, has all but quashed those reservations because it's real. I mean, you look at that and it's pretty undeniable.
Yes, and they're working on their second film, which will cover the Red Sea crossing site that Ron found and the Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia that he found.
All of these exciting things that we're going to be talking about in this series. Okay, so, well, stay with us. We are going to break for just a minute here. We'll be back more with Kevin Fisher. But right now, if you're enjoying what you're watching, just know that you make this possible. There are no corporate sponsors of Shabbat Night Live. We don't have somebody with deep pockets sitting there waiting to pay for the program. When you're seeing this, whether on television or online or wherever you're seeing this, it costs money to bring it to you. Now, you may say, well, it's free for me to see it on the internet. Yes, that's true, but it takes money for us to put the program together. There are people behind the scenes here who have families. There are buildings and electricity bills to pay, all this type of thing. So if you enjoy seeing this program, I encourage you to support A Rood Awakening International. Stand with us, as Michael always says. Stand with us, and you can continue seeing these programs, because if you don't, one day they may just disappear. That's the reality of it. Like we said, there are no corporate sponsors. It's you that makes it happen. So we want to give you the next couple of minutes to think about this. There's going to be some information coming up on your screen where you can support the work of the ministry here and find out more about us and how you can help continue what you're seeing on this program today. So stay tuned. We'll be going to that in just a second here. So you have 2 minutes to make your decision, and God bless you in doing that. And welcome back to the program. Thank you for supporting what we do here on Shabbat Night Live. Now, we're back with our guest, Kevin Fisher, and we're going to talk about some very exciting things. Before, we were talking about Ron Wyatt and what you are doing for Ron now through arcdiscovery.com. You are the president of Ark Discovery International, and this was a work that started a year after that Ron had died. And so this was a passion of yours that you never got to work with him while he was living, but you have decided to carry his torch.
Sure. I'm just trying to promote, what God has brought out, and we've seen that they're authentic. And so it's very exciting information.
Indeed. And Michael had met Ron Wyatt. This is how Michael got interested in the Red Sea crossing, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
All the classic teachings that Michael Rood has done came from visiting with Ron Wyatt. And he, like you, had visited with Ron Wyatt in person, found him to be a very humble, genuine individual that it was impossible to doubt, that the things that he discovered were real. And that's why Michael is so passionate about it as well. And he met Ron through going to a talk by Henry Groover. And Henry Groover encouraged Michael to go and visit Ron and see that he was real. And so I'm glad that you're here, because Michael would be just tickled that you're showing all these things here. Michael has his own collection of brimstone.
Yeah, I know he's been there a lot.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to get into now. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty here. We're going to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, and we're going to talk about something else yet in this next segment of the program. So take it away, Kevin. What can you tell us about Sodom and Gomorrah?
Well, first of all, a lot of people think all the cities are under the south end of the Dead Sea, that you cannot see them.
Okay.
But we're told by Josephus, the traces or shadows of the 5 cities are still to be seen. This was in the 1st century, and the water level has not risen since that time. We should be able to see them also. And so when Ron Wyatt in 1989 was driving along the Dead Sea, the one road along the Dead Sea there that goes through Israel, he saw these light color formations. In the background, you can see Masada in this image. See Masada is much darker. In the foreground, you see the soil is much darker. But in the middle bottom there, going horizontally, you see the ashen remains of Gomorrah.
So that's right on this. I mean, we can see it in this photograph.
Yes,
They didn't disappear, as some people say, into the sea.
And these are ashen formations. These are not just natural sedimentary rock and so forth. And so this is an image up to the north. This is of Admah near Jericho.
Okay.
And again, you see the light color ash.
It's very distinct, isn't it?
Yes, it stands out. Right. And then it is a soft material compared to what you would see normally in some type of soil. And then here is inside one of the cities. This is probably in Gomorrah. In the distance, you can see some right angles. A sign of, again, man-made construction.
Now, I lived in a province in Canada called Alberta for some time when I was younger, and there was an area there called Drumheller, and it had rock formations called hoodoos, is what they called them there.
Okay.
And it was where they found a lot of dinosaur bones from erosion and things like that. And people might argue that, well, those are just hoodoos, or those are like what we see in Arizona, but at closer inspection, that is not what we're seeing here. Even I can see that.
Yeah, it's a combination of burned limestone and brimstone or sulfur is what it is. The ash has been analyzed and so forth. And here's a nice image here of a nice 90-degree angle with a straight edge. Again, sign of some type of man-made construction in the ashes there.
Right, because even though we see, like we talked about Arizona, where you have these rock formations that have been dug out by wind erosion, years and years. They're usually rounded things. They're not going to be square. Like you have arcs and things of that nature, but nothing like this.
Yes, these stand out. And then here's an image I shot of, it looks like an arched entrance into the remains there. You have to be very careful when inspecting these sites. I've seen a lot of people. Last time I was there, I saw more and more evidence. I was back there in November. More and more evidence that people are inspecting these sites. People were stopping and getting out when we were there to inspect them. But there was a tour group that went out there and they found a hole on top of the remains here, and the people started gathering around it, and it fell through.
Ooh.
And 5 people died.
Really?
It's hard to breathe in ash. And so you have to be very careful trying to go into the remains.
So now there's another risk of this whole discovery here, that although we are finding more information about this area, I mean, if there are deaths happening there, it could be quite plausible that the Israeli government could say that's enough, we're closing this off.
Yes, they could at some point, but the tour groups are not going out there anymore. Of course, the tour leaders don't want to be held accountable for something happening.
Oh, so this
like
did
that.
not happen most recently in November?
Not recently, no.
Okay.
But sometime in the past. So you have to be careful when going out there. So here's another image we could see along one of the streets In the distance, you can see some beautiful 90-degree angles jutting out from the formations.
That definitely looks like a building of some type.
Yes, right. More evidence of man-made construction. And then here's a little closer shot of it. Really impressive, jutting out.
So now the walls are there, but now we see a lot of sediment around the walls and water erosion over the years. What is all that sediment there?
That's more of the ash that's just run down, the loose part of it that has worked its way down. There is some rain out here, not a whole lot. It does get a lot of wind erosion, as you spoke of, in this area. So most of the cities, they're in poor condition, but they're 3,500 years old. Very old remains, and it's rather soft material, so you can't expect them, to look perfect at this point.
Now, Paul knew about these. He knew about these cities. He spoke of them. Now, is there any evidence to suggest, or do you know that people have always known that these cities are there, and it's just in recent times that we've dismissed it?
Well, Josephus did say that he saw the brimstone. Josephus said he saw Lot's wife's pillar. And then he said traces or shadows of the cities are still to be seen. So it was documented in the first century, that they were there. And, Paul does say that they're a sign or example unto us, unto the ends of the world. And that example there is a visible example. And that's what we're seeing here, are signs of God's past judgment that we need to heed. Because this is going to happen again in the future when the lake of fire and brimstone, it falls down. So. And then here's another shot of some of the remains. Again, 90-degree angles coming out from the formations. And then here's a shot. This is like a 90-degree turn here. It's basically a square structure sticking out from the ash. It continues around the other side. So you have multiple 90-degree angles on this building.
Are there any assumptions as to what some of these things may have been? I know that Michael in his series on Sodom and Gomorrah mentions one area that looks like it would have been a temple.
Yes, there are some that are singular structures that do appear to be a large square-looking building. So yeah, I think we may have an image of one here in the slides. Now here is a swirling effect of thermal ionization, they call it, where there's a swirling effect where the electrons repel and attract, and these remains were swirling in the extreme heat, 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and so you see the swirling effect in a lot of the remains there.
And this is documented by those who know about these scientific phenomena here that happen.
Sure. Yeah. Now here it says, the ash there today is composed of calcium sulfate and calcium carbonate, which are byproducts of the limestone and sulfur burning. So the ash there is made of the correct composition of the buildings, the limestone, burning up, and the brimstone being there, the sulfur. At the days of Elijah, when his altar was consumed, God sent down fire and it consumed the stone altar. So we should expect the buildings there to also be consumed and turned to ash. God's fire is a consuming fire, and that's what he did that day. He consumed all the buildings.
So the chemistry doesn't lie.
Right.
This proves that there was a building here. These are not just geological formations.
Yes, it's a testament, to what happened there. And here's a couple of ziggurats on a raised formation that I saw. They're side by side. They're made of a wider material, like a ziggurat. And here's a close-up of the side of one of them. It looks like it's almost running down the ash there. And
it's strange how I've seen in some natural history museums where different cultures, to embalm their dead, they would take them to a dry, high place like the top of a mountain, where the bodies would essentially dry out and turn to a leather-like substance. And that's kind of what we have here, is it's preservation through a very dry climate. So that God has preserved this as a warning, like you had said, so that no one can argue that these are the sites.
Yes, they are well enough preserved where we can see the formation, we can see the brimstone, and we'll see later here an image of cremated bone. So people were consumed in these ashes.
Say on.
So in Genesis 19:24, then the Lord rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. So we should expect to see brimstone there. And on the side of that former formation that we saw just a minute ago, I saw some brimstone embedded in the side of it there. It was in a hardened shell. This brimstone, when it burns, the outer part of it turns to a liquid, and when it cools down, it has a hardened shell. And so in this graphic here, I'm using a knife to open it up, and inside you can see the unconsumed sulfur inside of it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then here is an image of something that appears to have melted. It's pooled down in the bottom, and the upper part of it here has got holes in it, like it's bubbling, extreme heat. I thought this was very interesting here.
Yeah, it looks like almost like a lava rock.
Yes, right. And then here is an image of, this could have been a temple. On the left, it's in the graphic behind us here, but on the left we see some type of singular ziggurat, and on the right we see a tower. This is a popular location. There's actually dinner parties that happen right out here. It's like the locals recognize, you know, this formation is unique. And yeah, I've been there twice, and they were holding nighttime parties there with elaborate lights set up and a sound stage. And
so come have a party in hell.
A party, right, where all these people, poor people died.
So this is, now obviously this struck you as something significant because you went to the expense of putting it on canvas. So what else holds special significance for this this site, or is it just an interesting?
Well, it's very unique. You know, looks like a man-made structure here. You have the ziggurat and you have the tower. So this is a very impressive picture right here. A lot of people get this photo. But here is a picture again of the ziggurat standing all alone there. And then next, this is very impressive. These are windows. You see a square windows going horizontally across here. Very striking to see this in the sides of the formations.
Even if someone could argue that these are not walls, what in the world are square holes doing in the side of them?
Right, these are all squares, every one of them there going across horizontally. And here's a little closer shot.
Wow.
Yeah, it's stunning to see this. You don't see that, you know, in nature, something like this. Very impressive. And this, again, this is in ash.
And even afterward, why would people come to this site and carve things on the side?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense
And this
either.
is high up. This is not down low. This is up high. It's hard to get to. Now, on the edge of most of the cities were a sphinx shape. And here we see a sphinx at the edge of Gomorrah. Perhaps it was designed to protect the city, but it did a poor job that day, I think.
Now, if you saw that at just one location, you might say, well, like Golgotha, the place of the skull where Christ was crucified, there is a natural rock formation there that looks like a face. One could argue this, but there's similar sphinxes at each one of the cities.
Yeah, I've heard that they're in each of the cities, yes. Now here's another, I'm standing by it here to get a size perspective, and you can see the nice sphinx design to it. Of course, after 3,500 years, it has eroded away, but you can still see some type of design here. So, and next, our friend Jason was climbing up the remains, trying to get to a large chunk of brimstone in the side of the remains. When you see a large chunk, it's nice to try to go after it, and he was able to climb up there and retrieve this large piece of brimstone.
And what he's walking in there, you could see it was not sand, it was ash.
Yes.
Something had burned there.
Loose material, right. And then here's another image of the brimstone that I found. It has like a burned ring around it. In the center of the cluster there on the center right is some unconsumed sulfur.
Okay.
So again, the burn ring, and inside you have the sulfur.
Now we have a box here in front of us that we'll be going through at some point, I'm assuming.
Yes.
And we'll be able to show you at home what we are looking at here, because all of these things that Kevin is talking about, we're going to see up close and personal.
Yes.
So stay tuned for that. It's coming up.
Yeah. And so here is a piece of brimstone inside a hardened shell. Again, when the brimstone's on fire, the outside of it is liquid. When it cools down, it turns into hardened crystals. And that's what we have there, are some hardened crystals around that.
Now, how hard is it to open? You had your knife in there.
It's very, very stiff. It's very hardened. And so here's a piece without the hardened shell on the outside of it. There was some underneath it, but that's another piece of brimstone.
Now, that's the piece that is very pure sulfur that is found nowhere else on Earth, correct?
That's right. This sulfur is 95% pure sulfur. It's the monoclinic form of sulfur. Most sulfur you find naturally is the rhombic type, that it's a more yellow color, but it's only 50% sulfur. So there's a big difference. So God rained down a unique type of sulfur to do this work. And so he left behind a marker for us to see that, you know, these sites are real. So in one of our trips here, there's this large cluster here on this large rock over here, or actually a piece of ash, and I'll show you a close-up of it. Here's the top of it. Now, what we're seeing on top of this, all of this on top of it are the hardened crystals. So there were hundreds of pieces of brimstone underneath this burning. It turned into a big pool of liquid. And when that big pool of liquid is about 6 feet long or so, when that pool of liquid cooled down, it left these crystals on top of it. On top there, the upper part of the photo, are the crystals. In the center across here horizontally is the unconsumed sulfur or brimstone.
That white section there.
That white section, yeah. So very, very impressive find. Again, on top of the crystals, you see the brimstone in the center going horizontally. Very impressive find. Here's another image of it. You see the brimstone sticking out, the crystals on top. I mean, you're not going to find this anywhere else on Earth. You know, this is totally unique.
So does the government of Israel allow people to go in and take sulfur? They don't mind?
They do. You know, the area is so large, you know, there's no limit as far as I know.
Let the whole Earth be warned. Take yourself home a piece of brimstone and don't do this.
Right. And so here is a close-up of some of the layers. Sometimes there's layering effect. In the background was the Sphinx shape we saw earlier.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, with the Dead Sea in the background. And so here's a close-up of another piece of brimstone in the formations that we opened up. You can see the unconsumed sulfur inside.
How many times have you been to this particular site?
Well, I made 3 trips over there to Israel, but I went to the site, you know, numerous times while there. Many hours. It's very impressive. Originally, I was not real impressed with the Sodom and Gomorrah stuff, but once you go out there yourself and start seeing this firsthand, it's very impressive to see it come to life in front of you.
Now, some of these are in vertical. They're basically shot into the sides of the walls. Or some of them are found in vertical.
Yeah, they're in various locations, and some people have. Well, I think Ron Wyatt thought they may have originally been about a foot in diameter originally, and then burned down to the smaller size. And here's a 90-degree angle, sort of like a window in the side of the formations. Pretty impressive. Here is another Sphinx. Now this one's in Gomorrah again. In the background is a ziggurat shape. So Sphinx, ziggurat. In Egypt you have a Sphinx pyramid, you know, near each other. But this is on a raised area, sort of like a high place. Here's a close-up of the Sphinx from another angle.
Oh, there you can see it. You can see the shape.
Yes.
It's definitely something man-made there.
Right, and this is again an elevated area for worship. There it is again. In the background is Masada. And this is about 40 feet long. This is a large Sphinx shape here. Very impressive. And then near it, we saw in the distance, was this ziggurat.
And those, you know, it should be just outcroppings like that. Again, more evidence that there's something different here. This was specifically made here. This was intentional.
And then here, this was taken down at the south end of the Dead Sea is Zoar. Zoar was later consumed. And it has kind of a square. If you see the light ash there, this has kind of a square shape, the white ash there.
So like today, the downtown core areas of most cities are grids, because that's where they start, and then the sprawl begins.
And they branch out, lose its square shape, Here's another image in Zohar of a square image in the background.
So this is drone footage. What are we seeing here?
Yes, so here we're looking down on the formations, and then I'm panning up.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah, and you can see across the city there.
Now this city, which city is this one?
This would be considered Gomorrah.
Okay.
The Bible gives the cities in order, creating the Canaanite border, and this would be the third city that's mentioned, starting from the south and going up.
So this is much larger than Zohar. This is huge.
Yes, right, this is huge. Sodom and Gomorrah were the two largest. That's why a lot of times you hear them say Sodom and Gomorrah, and they don't mention the other cities because they were smaller. But in the distance is the Dead Sea.
And this is all city, or some of this the hillside surrounding?
This would be all city here that we're looking at. Previously we did see Masada in the background, but at this point this would be all city.
How tall are the walls here? I mean, at estimation, what were the heights of these buildings?
About 30 feet, a lot of them. It's quite large.
And what are we seeing there? Is that a street or where the river runs?
A lot of these would be streets. And of course, there has been some erosion since the time. And there's the base of Masada in the background.
Now, some of these, like on the right-hand side there, you can see that one little area on the second level, as it were.
Yes.
That is very right angled.
Right.
That looks
far
definitely,
right here. Yes.
Yeah, you can't deny that was something man-made.
Yes.
And what are we seeing here as we zoom in over this area?
These are more of the remains here. You can see again the flat wall on the right here, right center. It's almost buried.
And that's all that's all the crystallization on top and brimstone underneath, I would assume.
Some of it would be. Most of this is just loose ash.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, ash, not dirt.
Right, right.
This did happen here.
Yes.
So why do you think it is that archaeologists still dispute that these are the cities, and they claim that they were swallowed up into the Dead Sea?
I don't understand. I mean, the evidence here is so clear. It's very interesting.
Wow, look at that. So you've gone out here several times. You bring people with you, or do you explore on your own?
Well, it's usually just friends I bring out there to take a look.
Okay.
But very exciting to see.
Now,
it's also sad. I mean, you got to realize that there were, perhaps 200,000 people that died here in Gomorrah.
Now, you had mentioned a few minutes ago about bones. Human bones.
Yes.
Do we want to get into that before we run out of time?
We can. We can show what we have here in the display box that I brought. But in the top left, you can see the naturally occurring rhombic sulfur.
And that's found elsewhere in the world?
And elsewhere, yes. It's just 50% sulfur. On the left side, we see two pieces of brimstone, one in the hardened shell. The other one, the bottom left, is out of the shell. And then in the top center, we see something that looks melted, a melted substance. In the bottom center, we can see cremated bone. Dr. Leonard Moeller, in his book, The Exodus Case, he has an image of a pelvic bone and vertebrae that he found out there.
This is the same Leonard Moeller who was on Michael Rood's Red Sea crossing.
That's
he was the captain of the boat, as it were.
Yes. And then on the right side here, we have some of the consumed brimstone where it turned into a liquid. And when it cooled down, it crystallized. So these are crystals here on the right side.
And that's what we saw in that 6-foot pool that you were showing earlier.
Right, the crystals.
That is just eerie, especially the bone.
Yes.
That makes it, why would there be people's bones out there? Why would they be cremated? What's with the ash all around the area?
Sir. It all adds up, doesn't it?
It does. It's just too obvious. Well, this has been fascinating, Kevin. Thank you very much. We've got way more to talk about here. We're going to talk about Kadesh Barnea. We're going to talk about the Red Sea crossing, Mount Sinai, the Ark of the Covenant, and our final episode is going to be Noah's Ark. So stay tuned to see the rest of the series. Thank you for supporting ShabbatNet Live, and we will see you next time with our guest, Kevin Fisher from Ark Discovery International.
The lives of Israeli victims hang critically in the balance following events of terror, violence, and war. But there's another painful problem: men, women, and children living in poverty. And you can be there for them. Visit us online at thelydiaproject.com. You'll find personal stories from the people who need you and the information you need to make a difference in their lives. When you give to the Lydia Project, you enable us to send help. Emotional and spiritual encouragement are especially needed during these critical days of recovery. Your support enables our ground team in the land of Israel to function as Yehovah intended, providing for the wounded soldiers, widows, orphans, and the poor. Help Israel. Give to the Lydia Project.